letting me interview you today. You're one of the founders of this Matariki Waihi, and so I just was wondering if you could tell me how was Matariki first formed?
So Matariki was first formed in pretty much 2010. So 2010, the cluster, Waihi cluster schools went to Te Pūmama. So we had a number of staff, board of trustees attend a two-day treaty Waitangi workshop, really, at Wairoa Marae. And then from that, that came out of some money, some fruitia that was available to put, like it came out of a Māori Achievement Fund, and they had a little bit left. Tracy and Cookie had a bit of money left, and Chapel Waitai was also part of our book then, and it was around what we could do for our Māori students. So the money needed to go into that space, and then we just had heaps of hui, and about that Te Pūmama would really fit. And when people came back away from that kind of course, it was transformational for their lives, their professionalism. We had staff that it was very emotional during those days that we were at Te Pūmama. We had people crying, and just it really touched them. So it was very life-changing for me. And then I remember driving back from those kind of courses and thinking, what can we do for our own local community? Like, teachers and educators have got to drive this. It cannot be left up to marae or homes and families because of the damage that's been done through generations, and law has really suppressed. It really, it just made them understand how things have come to be. Yeah, and so it really affected them. And so you can't walk away from that without thinking you've got a responsibility. Yeah, and as educators, we have a responsibility. So and I remember we were back to Waihi, and there was a radio ad on the local radio that was the Waihi Marae was having an open day.
Yeah.
And so I was like, right, our school's got to support this, because everyone's got to be on board. So I went to the open day and had gazebos and had our trophies and our technology and all that sort of thing, and just kind of help support the marae that way. And I guess more hui happens, with the big larger group of cluster of people, and kind of it even ended up that I remember walking, I think I was in Farmers one January, before Matariki Waihi kind of had started, we were looking at events and what we could do, and Leon Ruddersmith from the college phoned me on my mobile. I must have been in Kmart. He goes, I had this really good idea, Rachel. You know how you're talking about I think it was the hikoi. He was like, you know how they do the hikois, how you do the marches? We should do something like that. Yeah, and I was like, that's epic, let's do that. And so we just did and it was more around publicity. It was around walking up and down the street like a march, and promoting it, and having common waiata that we could all sing and raise the publicity and the profile of Matariki. And Matariki was fairly new. It was a fairly unknown concept to our community. It had been going for a lot more years in down sort of East Cape kind of way. They had been a little bit more involved in establishing Matariki in the modern times. But it was very new. Anyone that attended schools at Waihi was like, what is this? We don't know what this is. Māori New Year, what does that mean? So it's a great celebration. We did talk about, somebody approaching about doing something for Treaty Waitangi Day. That Waitangi Day, I was like, no, that's very political. It has a different profile. Matariki is very inclusive. It's very inclusive. It sits with our winter solstice for our European people. It sits with our gardeners. It sits with it sits with our nature and our seasons. Yeah, it's very much inclusive part. So then I think there was the hikoi. We also wanted to showcase kapahaka, because if you don't put it in front of people, you would never see it. No one's going to drive to another town just to go and watch a concert. So how do we showcase, what we do here? There were quite some big outcomes in the early days around, being comfortable on a marae, around tātai ako documentation, cultural competencies for teachers. How do we do that? And then doing it. It was all about seeing it. And so the first year we had Lan Wilkinson. He helped out because I knew him from Paeroa, and he did a talk at the Do you remember up at the first one where we did soup? Waihi Central teachers did soup. I remember Judy Cooper and Jess Hardley would come, like she was at the beach there, I think.
Yeah.
She might not have been. No, she was. And then and he literally had us looking the wrong way. Like we were right up overlooking the bar. Like, so, and then the following year, Rion and his mate came, another guy, and we were like, I was like, oh, why are we here? Like we were parked up on above the Bowen Town campground. I'm like, this is really strange. And then we saw it because the first year it was cloudy, we didn't see it. So we were kind of like, no, was it? And then the second year, we were out on the point, out on the above the campground, and flowed me down. I'm like, and it was so magical, like seeing it like that, it was just so magical. And I'm like, OMG, we were in the wrong place. Like, thank goodness there was cloud, But I still remember, all the soup in my kitchen, like all the different, like 8 crock pots with all the lights going at night, and Christmas, like looked like a Christmas tree lit up. It was so good. So it's kind of, those were the 3 key events. And then the second year, again, I think it was Leon again, because we tried to have these meetings between schools and just come up with ideas of how we could be celebrating Matariki as a community. And in the second year, we decided to go with Tūranga Waiwai rather than the Matariki theme.
Oh, yeah.
So it was around sense of belonging in place. And that was pretty funny because then Leon come up with, like, I don't know how involved, like he just comes up with these really creative ideas, and he must have been talking to staff. And then he said, actually, it should be like a Grammy night, because each school was doing their own story and their own video. They were coming out with a movie to play.
All right.
And then because we wanted to create a resource, that's the point of that one. We wanted to create a resource of stories about your area so that we had something forever.
Yeah.
Because we keep, jumping around and no one was kind of retaining these stories, and we'd have to go and outsource someone to go and find the story again. We didn't have it in the schools.
Yeah.
And and so then he said, why don't you do like an awards night? So that's how the college hall was set up with, you could watch the movies, like, so Central did Pukiwa, the story of Pukiwa, Waikino did the water journey, and they had Sean Fisher teaching there at the time, and she was a movie maker, but she's full on director. And so theirs was just incredible. Each school did their own, and then they had their own art gallery. Like we had gazebos and things just in the back of the wall and down into the staff room, and you presented your I don't know if beach was involved, however, because of course the second year they said no, and they only did it every second year at that time. So but we definitely had a Tūranga Waiwai theme, then we went back to Matariki, and then we tried to do kind of alternate like that. I guess it's trying to figure out, and it was also not making it too hard for people, but strengthening what we're doing.
So the initial purpose and intention of forming
there was that was around the tupu Māori objectives that came out of our Māori achievement hui. So I have to try and find the documentation, but it was certainly around like the tātai cultural competencies, being proud of where they are, and
so was it like to build up the cultural responsive competencies of teachers?
Yeah, absolutely, and provide opportunities for them for the impetus for that to happen.
What, sorry?
The impetus for that to happen. You have a, when you've got an event to work towards, generally work towards it. Was common waiata, it was about that, primary schools is also the one place that you can learn those things. Once you step into a secondary system, it's really an opt-in or a timetabling factors that impact your ability to access this.
And evolving over the years, the ECE came.
Yeah, they came in the second or third year, and they did an early childhood sports day. They started doing sports days down at the Marae on that big field below the Marae, and they would share like their responsibility. They'd all come with a particular game or something that they could alternate round, yeah. We also, you know, we would do a hikoi to the marae so that people, because a lot of it was making sure that people, you know, were comfortable with the marae or had visited there if it was an opportunity. But what would happen is often we're trying to organise something, we just organise it within our schools and within our community facilities and not be at the marae. So then we had to really be sure that we hosted something at the marae, like the puppet theatre. We had the puppet show one year. There was a group that came from down the line and they did Māori puppetry. Oh, yeah. So everyone got to see that. All the schools that opted in. And then there was, you know, we had kahurangi, the dance theatre dance crew, and they went around the different schools teaching classes around Māori theatre and dance and choreography. And then they also showcased, you know, they had a show. They were quite expensive, but schools, you know, knew how valuable that was. And then we had, and then again, that was going to different schools. So then we're not getting our children into community facilities or into the marae. So how do we ensure that? A long time there, like all the different things. Like I couldn't quite. I'll be missing stuff out.
Yeah. So what do you see as the benefits of getting all the schools together to do it collaboratively?
So it's extremely inclusive, and you've got a whole lot of skill sets from different schools and different people. And if you know, some schools can be really strong with that because they've got the staff and the personnel and the iwi links or the hapu links or the whānau links, or you know, they've got some skill sets. And so by putting it across, you know, you're actually gaining a lot more resources because you've got other people contributing to, you know, to the website, so that everyone would put up things to the website. So everyone had a central resource that they could access to help with their learning, with their kids' learning. Our families could access it. Yeah, it was really powerful. The kids would be singing it. And then you've got also the fact that it's inclusive and it's completely non-competitive. You know, no one is in a competition in this space. When you talk about different things that schools have, data around academic stuff, that's competitive. You've got numbers and quantitative data that you actually can be compared against. So this was like a whakangāhau, like it's just non-competitive. You know, everyone is there to showcase who they are and how they understand Te Ao Māori, not who can best understand it, you know. And I love, well, like Waikino would do the journey, the water story, and St. Joseph's would sing, you know, Kia Maria, like, you know, the Virgin Mary song, but it was just beautiful. And the waiata of Maria, yeah. So I think that everyone has their own unique attachment to where they, like in their space or their local story, or so you can be who you are. Celebrate that with the community.
What, if any, implications or challenges does this put onto schools, do you think?
Oh, huge. Yeah, huge time, resourcing, staffing, funding, logistics, personnel. But what it did do was when you combine together, you actually, you know, that whole tuakana taina comes in, because you go, oh, that school was doing this, or we could do that, you know, and you're really starting to aspire to all these other things that. Yeah. So, you know, but when people start talking about that collaboration, they start growing from that. And then the school grows.
So, Matariki across the cluster, what impact do you think it's had for them?
Just that sense of belonging, that cohesiveness across the town. You know, they I remember in the first year, like the college had like 6 kids in their kapahaga group. Now I know kapahaga can be a certain demographic or a certain piece of it, but it is a piece of information, and it's a large amount of data. And the fact that, you know, over the years they've come to 60 strong, you know, and what we've provided as primary schools because of Matariki is we've provided them with children that can perform or can step into that space without having to start from scratch. And you can definitely see the difference between the first year and, especially for our college, because all of those babies have been through, and now early childhood, they're getting it right from. And so then the college have got this platform that they can spring from.
And within your kura, I know you've got several kura.
Yep.
Maybe start back with your first one, the impact it had for the Matariki in your kura as a result of those.
So it's that sense of belonging, it's their security and their identity. Being proud of who they are. Teachers and educators stepping into their spaces in their community where they've never been seen before.
Next one. I was going to say that was your next one, that it's for your teachers. So
yeah, but it's for the tamariki. They see their people, they see the educators in their spaces. That's huge. That my teacher was at this with me, watching me. They must value, they must value what's happening here or what I'm doing. And just connect, and then I guess we go into the teachers around the connections for those teachers. More knowledge, knowing your learner. And knowing their learners more in depth, understanding where they come from, understanding who they live with, understanding what their strengths are. Because if we're, a lot of the time we're just measuring these kids on reading, writing, and maths, and we don't get to measure them on their strengths and their culture. That's an ongoing question.
Yeah.
Sports and
so you've CTO said how, because you've got your Māori and your non-Māori, when you're saying connections with tamariki, knowing the learners, that's for everybody.
It's everybody.
For Māori learners with a sense of belonging and identity in your school and or the wider community, how does this impact them?
For non-Māori? Or for
Māori?
Oh, the value placed on who they are as people and as part of the land, as part of Aotearoa. That's especially down here, it's Koa Te Pātiki, like I'm the founder is me. We don't own anything, and we don't own the land, and the land doesn't own us. We are one, so that aligns with how Māori people think, or how they've always thought. All of the, we don't even call it myths and legends now, all of the pūrākau, all of the cultural narratives are around safety, the Te Koha o Tangaroa story around the fish, when Tangaroa gifted the hook to, so that, because who was the little baby that was real tangiweto and he needed to be fed all the time, like he was just kept eating the fish, so they had to sustain this baby because he just cry all the time. So Tangaroa gifted a hook. Now the hook, you had to, number one, ask your father for permission to go fishing. Number two, you had to acknowledge Tangaroa, like say thank you, and karakia. And number three, you had to throw the first fish back. The principles around that always tell someone where you're going, in terms of safety. Always give karakia so you can focus on, don't ever turn your back on the sea, and you're not focused on your job at hand, then things can go wrong. And number three, sustainability, with fishing. That's the first one there. Like there's so many lessons to be learned within these cultural narratives, which are the local stories, but they're also New Zealand stories that have been passed down through generations, and people haven't been listening. There's stories around even it's taken 9 or 10 years for Aotearoa's story to come out, and that's because that story is around the underground taniwha and how he goes between Orakawa Bay and Waihi, and his story is around how the three maunga formed in Waihi, the Pukewa, Mana Motuhake, Motu Manawa and Motukiho Hill, like Black Hill, Union Hill, Martha Line. And his one is how he used to travel, in the underground tunnels, like in the underground streams, but it's very ugly taniwha. And there's 3 maidens from Matariki from Waihi. He wanted them to be their wife. They said no. He got angry. They teased him, berated him, and he got angry and flicked them with their tail, and they became the maunga. Now that story wasn't around in 2010. We weren't allowed, there wasn't that trust that actually people were going to take a story and use it in the right way. Because if that story did get told, but the mining companies did not listen. So they have cut through all of the underground streams. That taniwha now, or that kaitiaki cannot travel, is stuck out, away. So if you're not going to listen to the story, and you're not going to listen to the messages or the morals within it, and you're going to use part of it, but not the other, then you can't be trusted. You can't be trusted with that. And I think that Matariki through the schools has allowed local hapa and local iwi to trust the education system with their stories. Now they know that we are ensuring that they are adhered to, that they are used in the right ways. It's been a long journey of how do you gain that trust? How do you ensure that even if you take a story, you don't use it in a way that misappropriates it or misuse it or cuts it up in half because I like that bit and that's going to benefit me over here in my world, my business or in my school. Yeah. So that probably aligns to the wider community, but even the wider community, like the Waihi Beach community board, they've just started ringing Rion and I, and Rachel, we're gonna give you all this money. We've got enough money. How much? Just tell us how much you need for this Matariki. And I'm like, we've been going 12 years. Not once have we been able to access money from the local community board, and it's happening. Now, and he's ringing to say, I've got some money. And then he says, I've told Rion, he needs to. Whatever he's going to sort out and do, I'm like, it hasn't, and for me, I get a little bit pippy because I'm like, it hasn't been Rion, it's been the schools, it hasn't been the kapu. So, yeah, but schools aren't allowed to apply for community board funding because they're already funded by the Crown, and so then you're in this big mess of funding trouble that you have really big challenges around how do you access money for things. And I met Rion yesterday, and we're like, we don't even know what we need money for. Matariki has been run on a smell of an oily rag for 12 years. We have never needed, or if we have, we've just been borrowed. And there's been lots of koha, and we've lots of there's been some really key people in the community, like some Max McLean, who just say, look, I don't know if I'll give $350 to make sure you can give a koha to the local marae or tawhiti for the dawn viewing, and that'll pay for the cups of, the paper cups and the teaspoons and also a koha for the marae, so that's been how we've got by. Like, we do a little bit of grant applications, but often you've got to be well in advance, and schools don't really work like that. And you've got to be responsive, and with the date changes or you're not sure how what's going to happen.
Yeah. So I was going to say here, has the initiative strengthened relationships with iwi and
yeah, that's what I mean around it's uplifting the mana of iwi marae, uplifting their essences of who they are and what information they want to have out here. It's going back and valuing and saying which waiata is the most appropriate. Not just schools thinking, well, we're going to do this one and this one and this one, without actually the meaning of it or whether you're ready to receive that knowledge. You understand all the stories that have come before that. In Waihi, it's allowed, the local marae to be called upon for their expertise. If we didn't have Matariki Waihi happening, would the marae be needed by schools? But certainly meant that we've needed to lean on them for that local expertise to make sure we're doing it right. Yeah. And moving between iwi, moving between Hauraki and Waihi and Matariki, very different, very different. I sort of started when I got to beach, I started calling the pōwhiri a whakmahi whakatau because I'm like, in Hauraki, in Hauraki tanga, it's not a pōwhiri, it's a mihi whakatau. And so I got back out here and I'm like, oh no, change that, get on Facebook, change it to pōwhiri, change it to mihi whakatau and explain all that. Uncle Roger came into school. on my second term. He said, oh, you know, on the Facebook, you got that whakatau thing. I said, yeah. He said, it's a pōwhiri. I'm like, oh, okay. On the Facebook page. You know, like that, but yeah, you have to be extremely respectful of where you are in your place. Yeah, where you're localized. Yeah, it's very different. So.
And the fact that he could come and felt comfortable.
I know, it was amazing. Like, I just was like, that's huge in itself, that he actually was felt, you know, that he had felt comfortable to come onto school and tell me off. That's what you need. That's what you need. Yeah, I think it's elevated the profile of my people with skill sets that aren't qualifications. Like, if we had to align everything to ministry, you know, you need a qualification. Well, we'd be in a really dark place, because who says that's a qualification?
Yeah.
Who says you're fully qualified? You know, your kuia, that's a qualification far higher than a university degree. You know, so that's what you have to go with. And I think that schools are really starting to align themselves with people who've got that qualification. They're actually there, you know, the local hapu or marae committee, or has said, these are the people we trust, you communicate with them and you'll be right. You know, that cultural safety for schools has been increased. Still want him to be like employed by the coal, like the kahuiapo. You know, imagine paying him what he gets paid at the timber yard. He works night shifts at the timber yard. You know, pay him a salary, give him a car, and let him service all of our schools and keep our, you know, our cultural safety. You know, and it would be different for different schools, but certainly you could be using that amazing knowledge in the education system that's impacting hundreds of children. Tim means like Uncle Tim, you know. I've talked to our principal cluster. I've talked to the mine. You know, I'm like, you want to give us all 10 grand each? Put that 10 grand into people like that can actually sustain us, because that 10 grand just goes into the budget and gets sucked up. It doesn't go into you know, cultural things. I mean, it does to a degree, but certainly, you know, if they were to start to actually say, this is what it's for, this is how we support our community. Because otherwise it's diala kamatua, it's diala pōwhiri, it's diala karakia, you know, very much what was it. It's not like that anymore, but it can be.
So looking at the wider community, you know, the other side of the marae.
Yeah.
So you talk about
the business communities, the community groups getting on board with things Māori.
Example of that.
Oh, like the Waihi Beach Community Board, you know, now reaching out and saying, hey, we want to support this financially. With the businesses, it's around their children, so, or their workers that have got children, and they see the joy that it brings to their families that they employ.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then they're like, oh, this is on, like this, they let their workers get off early to go to the celebration, or they, you know, are engaged. The Coast Guard, you know, went to the Dawn Room for the first time 2 years ago. Had never been, and yet, you know, the amount of, and they work in that space all the time, like daily. But they said they've never been to the mine. I've never heard that story around it again. Man, did they just feel so awakened by what is actually right here, and they're working in it all the time. Yeah.
Wow.
It was really special. People down there.
Just trying to think who else.
Well, you've got lots of families, you know, that miss it now. Like, so they've got young kids that went through it, and then and they're like, oh, when is it on? Or, you know, they think it's a regular or a it is, but they want to know when is it happening. They expect it. They expect it to happen, which is pretty cool.
You talk about whānau, ex-whānau.
Yeah, former students. It started with student workshops. Do you remember we like Ngāwhera?
Yeah.
She was one of the first students. And who else? It was when I was on maternity leave with Mateo. Yeah. early June, because that's how it started. I was on maternity leave with Mateo, so I had term 1 off of 2011, and from all the work of 2010 that we're doing Te Pūmāmā stuff, we then went into, I had a term off, so then I was able to run student workshops. So I did like 6 workshops with Clark Corfu, me, and we'd do it at different schools. So we would do, I remember doing Manu Tukutuku at St. Joe's, and we did one at the basketball centre, and just getting the different people in to work with these students. There was 14 kids, 2 or 3 from each school.
Right.
And we came together.
Yeah.
And then the kids did these activities around Te Ao Māori, and we talked about all the things that were important and what we could do for the community, which is how they planned the concert, the dawn viewing, and the heat. Yeah, it was started from student workshops, and it was a cross section of every school. Do you remember that? Gotta find a book. I've got to find my folder. Like I've got to.
That'd be great. Yeah. So that was.
And I've got lots of data like this, like what went well, how many attended, where could we improve from most years. You know, love learning something different every year. It's a great chance for our family to be involved in celebrating Māori nation building, time for reflection, teach and celebrate our tamariki on a professional and personal, family spending time together, showcasing the learnings, like, you know, like creates the feeling it creates for our family is similar to the European Harvest Festival. It's amazing to be able to get this connection, consciousness, acknowledging Māori language culture, brought our place in Te Whānau together.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got some really good data around how it has benefited. Yeah. And that was the dawn viewing. Oh no, this is the dawn viewing. Having the fire, you know, fire pit storytelling.
Yeah.
It was close to home, so that they're not going to go to another town and do it. Like, just making things really easy. Everything they loved about it. Breakfast was good. The kōrero, the kai.
Yeah.
Right, visit to the marae was really inclusive and had a great vibe.
So, are there other collaborative initiatives outside of the Matariki Waihi that have helped build cultural responsibility?
Yeah, so I do believe that when the kahuiako, you know, we started kahuiako, we'd have to go back to our dates, but probably 3 or 4 years before our kahuiako actually became a community of learning. So we would have these meetings every, you know, monthly or whatever, every term around the community of learning initiative and how we wanted that to roll. And most of the people in that room, all of us pretty much were like, we want it to be marae style. We do not want a leader. We want it to be a collaborative. Everyone comes to the meetings. Yes, and we would talk for 2 hours, and 45 minutes of that was around one thing that we ended up going around in circles, and never a decision or the same decision that happened right at the start. So people would come and go, oh, there's no waste of time. They're not a waste of time. That is how, you know, that's how you kōrero. That's how you make sense of everything and you make a decision to move forward. I think we were in those meetings for 2 years before we even set up, like, and over that time, we're like, people are missing out on money right now. We could have a lead principal getting paid $25,000 to $35,000 on their salary. We could have people stepping into those leadership positions and having release. We could have an after school, across school lead. We could have these, you know, we're missing out because we haven't signed what the ministry wants to do. And we were very anti what was holding us up with the achievement challenges, because we didn't want our achievement challenges to be around reading, writing and maths and national standards. And that's all the ministry would accept. And so we tried to boycott, you know, to a degree, that type of pressure and evaluation. So we didn't. But ultimately, in the end, we were like, people were losing out and the schools were losing out because there was an opportunity for people to step into middle management roles and grow people. So we said, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead with it. And yeah, just put those targets in, you know, who cares? We know that our action plan or our high level plan will not be around those targets. We know what our high level plan does will impact those targets, but it certainly isn't doing those targets. You know, we're not doing more reading to get better reading results. We're ensuring learner agency. We're ensuring bias and beliefs are sorted. We're ensuring that you know, our 5 work streams. So
what were your main targets?
so it's bias and beliefs. Well, it's Te Tere Te Waitangi as a lived reality is the actual goal of the kahuiako, but it's bias and beliefs, lunar agency. I'm pretty sure it's lunar agency. Transitions, so lunar pathways. It's hauora is one, and the 5th one is, it's kind of like lunar centered. There's a
Expanded.
what?
When I was doing it.
No, those were what came out of the. That's what came out of all of the Auckland University. No, then only your school had to focus on 2. There was always 5 happening, but each school opted into whichever ones that they felt were most appropriate to their school. So each school opted into lunar centered, I think, and hauora. Those were the 2, and so you'd go to meetings based around with other schools that were interested in those. It was the theory of action. That's what that was, and it still is. It's still in place, but it's really interesting that I remember when, in those first discussions, I was like, Matariki Waihi was the first community of learning before the ministry came in with a community of learning. You know, like we were operating as a community of learning around a kaupapa that was inclusive, a kaupapa that was not competitive, a kaupapa that you know, would helped each other. Yeah, it's a really beautiful space, and it needs to be strengthened. It needs to be evaluated and reviewed. But you know, we're just educators. We're not researchers. You know, we just So it's pretty hard to step outside of our current roles all the time to evaluate something like this. Yeah. So I think it's pretty cool. Like, as much as we can. As much as I can. People say, do you want to come on, come on the committee every year on my mic, you know, like the committee of 2 people. All I do is set the dates. And then everyone does their own thing, you know, which is awesome. And it comes together. Yeah. I remember with Beach School, it was like, can you guys do that during again? You know, like we've done it once, can you do it now? Yep. And then staff rally and they get soap, like they get the soup done. Someone will coordinate with them and that just happens. It doesn't.
So how do you think it's maintained its sustainability over the last 12 years?
A person.
A coordinator.
Setting the dates, making sure everyone's aligned. Like I've just done 2 weeks of emails with the principals to ensure we've got the right date for community celebration. You know, so and with the college bookings and stuff like that. Once that's done, we'll send it over to like Wendy Shea, the arts coordinator at the college. She'll work. I generally get 2 kids that are from the lighting and sound crew, pay them a $50 koha each to run the lights and sound system for the night. One of the DPs live streams into the classrooms. So the kids have got to, you know, Alice just sorts out the map of where everyone's going to go. It's very collaborative. Like everyone just pitches in for their particular thing. But East will do the hikui. And we've shared that around a little bit. And sometimes sharing it around and delegating though means it's never as good as what you think it's going to be, or it takes a different part, which is fine. But if the point of the hikui is for publicity, is to raise awareness, that's what a march does. Like that is what a hikui does. So if you think about the essence of what a hikui is, it has to have it. It has to catch people's eye. It has to make them go, whoa, what's happening? You know? And for a while there, different people would run it and it would be, oh, we're just going to do a little show here and we're not going to stop traffic. You know, I'm like, we should stop traffic. You know, and they say, oh, it's easier for the schools if we go at morning tea. No, it's not. Lunchtime. Interrupt people's lunch times. You know, that's when they're out having a good cup of tea, you know, they're sitting there. Like, yeah. So just different. I guess it just goes back to the why. Why are these events? Why these events? Like what is the point of these?
What impact were you hoping, like, for the community to come out? What was your drive for that? Like you said, you want to make that impact.
Just awareness. Yeah, awareness, raising the profile of Te Ao Māori. people will not go and buy their kid an ice cream because they went up a reading level. They'll go and buy the kid an ice cream because they saw them on stage and their hearts swelled and they, like they feel proud of their kids. And when you talk to people now, generally the parents that are enrolled in their kids, that's what they want. They want their child to have a connection to their country, to their culture, and white, non-Māori and Māori. They just want that for their kids. Can't get it anywhere else in the world. You can't go anywhere else in the world and have what we have. So if we can help people access it, then that's okay.
Yeah. Where to now then?
Well, you're going to tell me, Fee, when you've collected all this information, you're going to be like, okay, this is what we need to do. And because it's, the first few years I'd be going back to the marae and I'd get them to do a debrief, on the impact. So I've got all those notes and I'm like, it doesn't sit with me. Like, like it should be the marae driving it, but should it be? I don't know. I think that, but I don't know whether that's the right approach because it depends on what their priorities are. Their priority is not education. So actually it's on whatever the vehicle, like whatever the point is, then what's the vehicle and who's supposed to be driving that. And I think, it does take a court, it takes someone to say, these are the dates. Because I remember when St. Joseph's, they didn't want to do it. Like Sean was like, oh, no, we don't need to do it. Or, we're not really, it's too busy for us or something like that. And in the end, we were about 4 weeks into planning it one year. And he rang me and goes, Rachel, this Matariki thing. And I said, yeah. He goes, how are we getting involved? I said, Sean, you didn't want to. And he goes, yeah, I know, I got these bloody parents now. And they want, they're asking, they're pressuring him to be part of it. Yeah, certainly that is. So you get this groundswell from, why isn't our school doing it? Like we're a community.
Yeah.
We're not individual schools.
Yeah.
Our people aren't individual schools. They send their kids to different schools, but they're not. They all still live in the same place. Yeah, and they connect with the same, range of people.
Is there anything that you would add or change to the current process of Matariki?
For me, I feel like it's like everyone just does it at one time and that's it, and they leave it there. I don't know what it's like in different schools anymore. But I don't want it to just be that's our tick box that we've done it. We've done our things. We've done Matariki. We don't. You want it to be part of everything because the lessons you learn out of the narratives, out of this waiata, out of the stories, they're teaching you something. So how do you make sure that process of teaching happens all year, all the time, not just in term 2?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very term 2. That's it. So how do we build on these amazing things that bring us together, that help us connect with people, that probably align with everyone's vision and values? How do you continue that through other kaupapa or other things that are happening?
Yeah.
Or even just that's the way they think. So it's not an add-on or a separate thing from actual learning or actual teaching or actual school business.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it can be like, for a while it can be like that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add to me? Anything else you want to say that I haven't covered in the question?
Well, I don't know. I'll probably email you. It's a fun booklet.
Yeah.
It'll take you back to, we sold t-shirts. We had t-shirts one year. Or was it the first year? Yeah, and then for the community to buy. And then we also had and we had a design of the Cornish pump house with Matariki, we have a logo for Matariki Waihi.
Yeah.
Because it was around how do you connect the town with, with an iconic thing that relates to them. And then we did one year we did Starlab. We had the astronomy people out, so there's so much scope for different ways of learning and exposure for different things. And we're really isolated, we're very insular. We don't have much, we're not close to big towns and cities. And I think there's huge potential for across the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does come down to individuals helping each other out, I suppose. You know, at one point the kahuiako said, oh no, Matariki is not part of the community of learning. I was like, okay. It contributes to the community of learning. Like everything schools do and children do is actually the community of learning, not the other way around.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't just decide, oh, well, that's not part of the community of learning. Like, yeah, that was kind of a flippant comment at one point. And I was like, really? But you never know where people are in their journey in Te Ao, you know, whether they're at, they cannot stand tokenism, or that they, you know, have to be tokenistic until they can come to a point where it's not. You know, everyone is on a continuum of that. Like, so it's their own perspectives and where they're at. Like, and then the following year, people want to be involved. Okay, good. Yeah. So,
You pretty much got all the primary schools
and the early childhoods in the college.
Yeah. Is the college just the is it just does year 7 and 8 get involved? Invited them.
Yeah, so we also have Tupperware tournament.
Yes.
So that's that's a year 5-6 tournament, but the college do their own Tupperware as well. The year 7, 8 do.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we get all of their refs, you know, like the umpires come back and they ref our Tupperware teams. The college do the community celebration, pretty much run that, and also they will participate in the hikoi in terms of depending on how many children they can release and things like that. But yeah, they've been quite instrumental. I remember, you know, in the first few years it was pretty tough organising things like that with police escorts and, you know, traffic safety management plans and stuff like that for the hikoi. And yeah, Alistair would just step in and save my bacon because I'm very ambitious with. I feel like, let's do it.
Let's go
to get all the details that are actually, you know, legally you have to do.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to stop that there. Meeting for this is going to ask me to